protection. So Portugal has said no more PCR testing. So we are winning. But in Germany, this was done by solidfacts.org and Manuel During, under health and safety. The biggest crime is that the elderly are in the old folks' home, but that teenagers are required to wear masks in school. It is shocking. It is a crime against that generation. So Manuel During took a precedent's case that there is health and safety law for masks, that after 2 hours you should be told, and he proved that masks cause permanent brain damage. So if you're a parent and your children are in school, after 2 hours, so if they are required to wear them for 40 hours, you are causing your children significant harm. And he did a court case that just is applicable in Dusseldorf, but because we won that case, it has implications for every teacher and every principal and every employer across the world and in Ireland. That we won that court case, and we used a PR campaign, and the statement that was 2 pages got 13 million downloads in 6 hours and 1,100 million views in 5 days. So unfortunately that company has been destroyed, and the bank accounts have been shut down, and the web pages have disappeared, and the people involved have had death threats, including to their families, and are now on the run out of Germany. Okay, so obviously that we are having huge pushback, and that's why we're getting death threats. But I did an interview in America the day after, and I said, that means 1 in 6 of the world population is looking at us now. So one way to push back, of course, is to sue people that force you to wear masks, right? But they're insurance companies, okay? Because, for example, there are airlines that require you to wear masks, which means they are causing permanent brain damage to people who fly, including teenagers and children. So all you have to do is sue the insurance company for permanent brain damage, which would be about $250,000, which is what we did. We bought shares, and we wrote to the CEO of companies and their boards to say, what's your indemnity insurance and how much cover do you have? Because if you're flying, 10,000 people every day, and for every €200 ticket, you've got $250,000 liability, you don't have enough insurance. So therefore you can't fly because you're trading fraudulently, and the CEO needs to make the shareholders of effort. And the companies, the globalist airlines like Qantas or SAS or KLM that are requiring vaccines, they are now liable for the adverse events of those vaccines multi-generationally, right? Because the vaccines with RNA will have huge, issues. So that means that actually all of the airlines in the world are now bankrupt, right? Because they actually are trading fraudulently because they are amounting. And that means that the airlines of the world that are perpetuating the lockdown, that are requiring these PCR tests, they are now going into Chapter 11, like Norwegian Airlines. So I put out a call for any owners of airlines in the world, if they wanted to join with me to develop a new brand of airline that would push back on governments to say, if you go on this airline, we are not doing any PCR testing, we are not doing any vaccines. And of course, now that we have the World Freedom Alliance, so we have all of the doctors and scientists in a pillar, we have all the lawyers in the world with us, like Robert Kennedy's lawyers, Mary Hall and Reiner Fulmick, Rocco Gelati, all of the people in the world. And some of the multi-millionaires who are funding it, and billionaires who are fighting for freedom behind the scenes, that I am saying that this Freedom Airways will have the lawyers of the world with us, so that if a government says, no, you have to have a PCR test, you have to have a vaccine, the airline will push back against, for example, the Irish government and say, wait a minute, don't we have inalienable rights of freedom to travel? Doesn't our preamble of the Constitution recognize our inalienable rights? And part of freedom of speech is freedom to travel. Part of freedom of speech is freedom to assemble. but it is enshrined in our constitution as well. And didn't we have a referendum in Ireland that we could travel? And don't we have a common travel area with the United Kingdom? So you could have have the first flight and then say to the individual prime ministers or ministers for transport that if you are doing something that's unlawful and constitutional, we will win, but we can sue you individually under malfeasance and malfeasance in public office, because if you are bringing in acts that are actually unconstitutional, that individual minister and prime minister and president who have signed that in Ireland can personally be sued under malfeasance for the loss of income for all of the people that couldn't fly. So after that interview, 2 owners of airlines around the world have contacted me, and we are now branding Freedom Airways around